Hello, everybody, and hello from Japan, where it's snowing a lot. I hear that back home it's snowing a lot too. I have about 2 more weeks here in Japan, and I hope some of you have been watching the messages I've been sending home. I hope they've been helpful or useful. This is a special message, though, one that I'm going to post on YouTube as well, because there seem to be a ton of people asking almost the same question. So there's something about this question that's very timely. I'm not sure what it is, but something seems to be very important to folks. Of course, no one asks the question in exactly the same way. One version of the question is actually about my daughter and me. I think most of you have met my daughter, Jasmine, and you know that she is not a member of our community. She's not a member of our tradition. She's not a Zen Buddhist. She's a Christian. She's a member of a Christian church, and she's not just a member, but a very active and involved member. She's a member of their worship team, which means that she sings on the stage. They have like a little band, and she's the singer in the band, or one of them. There's a couple. And I go see her. You guys know that quite a bit when she's singing because, she's my little girl. But obviously I love her and she loves me. But you've met her and she spent time in our community with us, and she's comfortable with us. She feels no concern or worry that we're different than she is. And you see, I have no such concern for her. I'm not trying to convert her. She's not trying to convert me. How's that work? Some of you asked that question, and some of you are asking a related question. We don't proselytize. We don't try to convert people. Well, why not? I mean, if supposedly we've got something useful, why don't we want to share it? We do want to share it. Converting and sharing are not the same thing. And a broader question, there's not that many of us. Our community now has 117 members. There's thousands of people in our area just within walking distance or short driving distance of our community hall, thousands of people who go to Christian churches or Jewish synagogues. Even there's probably more people at the mosques in the towns, than come to our community. So when we're such a small minority, how do we interact with people of other faith? What do we think about other faiths? That's sort of what we're talking about here. To talk about that, I want to talk about 4 words. Now, these are not definitions from a dictionary, but rather the way I use these words. Faith, religion, superstition, cult. You can see them on the graphic, and you can see the bright shining one is faith, and it gets darker and dimmer as you go down the list. That's the way I use these words. I'm going to talk about these words, but first I need to talk about language. It matters to this discussion. Language is not private. One of the great philosophers of the 20th century, Ludwig Wittgenstein, pointed out that private language is incoherent. As a concept, it's incoherent. It's nonsense, to use the technical meaning of the word nonsense. It makes no sense. It can't mean anything. Language is a social event. We don't have private words for private experiences. That's not the way the language works. So, where do we start? With this word faith. That's the way I'm going to use the word. To have a faith is to experience, at least for a bit, an ineffable insight. Now, many of you don't know the meaning of the word ineffable. It's not an everyday word. It means inexpressible, but not just inexpressible because we have not yet invented the words, but incapable of ever being expressed. Logically impossible to express because it's such a uniquely private and personal experience. The great paradox that we realize about this ineffable insight, that though it's uniquely private, what we take from it is that there is nothing that's uniquely private, that we're all interdependent. This insight yields compassion. That's going to be my marker for whether there has been a true insight. It teaches compassion. It demands compassion of the one who has that insight. Faith, the insight, enlightenment. That's what it's all about. And this is not the private possession of any tradition or any part of the world. The Dalai Lama, the head of the Tibetan branch of Buddhism, said Jesus was a Buddha. He meant that, I think. I don't think he was just being politically correct. He was expressing the view that this insight comes to people in all places and times. And some have enough of this insight that they become consumed with the need to try to share it. But it's inevitable. See the dilemma. I can't express it, but I want to express it. That's where metaphor, myth, and ritual step in. These are tools we use to try to point at the insight. We can't truly express the insight, but we can point towards it. And that pointing, that myth, that metaphor, that ritual is religion. Religion is not the insight, but true religion is truly an attempt to point at that insight. You guys remember the famous story from Buddhist literature that the finger pointing at the moon is not the moon, so we don't need to obsess on the finger, but we just need to look at the moon. The finger pointing is just to make us look at the moon. The myth, the metaphor, the ritual in religion is to make us look beyond that to the moon, to try to grasp a bit of that insight. Now, the problem is that's not going to, unfortunately, be as widely shared as we'd like. The ability to see beyond the myth, the metaphor, the ritual to the insight. It's much more common for people to latch on to simply the myth, the metaphor, the ritual in religion, and not really worry about trying to catch the insight at all. This is where religion degenerates into superstition. That's the way I'm using the word. It's all doctrine and dogma, no insight. It's just stories. It's no longer seeing your myth as a powerful pointer at the moon, but as a thing of value in itself. In fact, the thing of value in itself. The thing is to believe this story. That's superstition. But at least even in superstition, these myths, metaphors, rituals, which become doctrines and dogmas, though they no longer inspire you to feel compassion, they do tend to encode in their stories a code of behavior that is based on compassion. You may not be compassionate if you're a superstitious believer, but your doctrines teach you to do things that a compassionate person would do. So at least there's some value in superstition. But finally, it degenerates all the way to the bottom. It becomes a cult. And when it's a cult, all we have are the doctrines. All we have are the dogmas. There's no value left. There's no compassion. There's no attempt to express or encode the values of compassion at all. Now it's a cult. And now it's the opposite of faith. It's no longer in any way a good thing for the world. It's only a bad thing. It's only a bad thing. And I do believe we've seen that much of the white evangelical Christian church in America has become a cult. There's a congressional district in the United States, the one that most strongly went for Trump is also the most evangelical in the United States. That's not a coincidence. This supposed religion has become a pure cult without morality at its core in any way, without compassion. I will use morality as the encoding of the insight of compassion. They don't encode that insight at all anymore. So if we see cults, we're out of there. Superstition, not happy with that. But if you find someone with a true religion, where their myth, their metaphor, their ritual points towards an insight, then you need to support that. Now, one of the reasons I chose Buddhism is because we're trying to do without the myth, the metaphor, the ritual as much as humanly possible. We don't have a deity. There is no God in our religion, in our faith tradition. I would argue there's really no founder. There's no great semi-divine figure. Yes, Shakyamuni, the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, most likely was a historical figure. And some aspects of the legends, pardon me, I was about to cough there. I'm still going to cough. Some aspects of the legend of Shakyamuni's life is legendary biography. Some aspects of those are probably grounded in some factual historical events. But if it turns out there is no such person or was no such person at all, so what? Makes no difference. We don't do something because, quote, the Buddha said. We do something because we see it for ourselves as true. It matches our insight. That's why I chose Buddhism, but that doesn't work for everybody. For some people, they need more myth, they need more metaphor, they need more ritual, and I don't mean that as a criticism, because some of this myth, metaphor, and ritual is some of the most beautiful expression of human creativity. Certainly, the ritual of singing the beautiful music that my daughter sings in her church is something that, in a way, I miss that we don't do that. I mean, I don't know how we could do that, how we could fit something like that into our practice. But her music, the music she sings is moving. And she sings sometimes songs I remember from my childhood growing up in an evangelical church back in Oklahoma. And it brings tears to my eyes. Though, of course, the actual words mean nothing to me. but the spirit behind the words still do, especially when my daughter sings them. But that's a dad speaking as well. Okay, so if you find someone who has a true insight that they're expressing in a real religion, then go with that. Support them. They are all our brothers and sisters in the light of the insight of compassion. If this person's religion expresses compassion and it shows in their life, then there's nothing to criticize. Okay, thank you.